Good evening. Thank you all for coming. I just wanted to take a minute to welcome you, especially those of you who are visiting for the MDES, the MDE, and the DDES programs, and really tell you how happy we are that you're here. We hope that you'll be with us tomorrow also when we have the open house for the departmental programs. Over the last few years, we've really spent a lot of time focusing on the MDES program, on the MDE, which of course is now in its second year, and of course on the DDES program. And these programs play a really incredibly important part of in the life of the school. And the key thing for us is the way in which these programs address critical issues that we all face, broadly linked to the built environment, and really try to be both very useful and at the same time extremely experimental in nature in terms of what they explore and what kind of investigations they deal with. So their cross-disciplinary nature is something that I think is also very much reflected in the work of our speaker tonight. And I'm going to let John May will make the introduction, will introduce Patricia, but her work really does exemplify cross-disciplinary work and work that's at the intersection of many different fields. Tonight's talk is also being presented under the auspices of the Margaret McCurry Lectureship. Margaret was a Loeb Fellow here. She endowed the fund in the year 2000, and she's had a very long-standing connection with the school. She's from Chicago. Sadly, she's not with us here tonight, but Margaret is the principal of the firm Tigerman McCurry in Chicago, and I'm sure that many of you are familiar with their work. And the fund has enabled us to bring world-class design practitioners in the field of interiors, landscape, urban design, and planning to the school. I also just want to put in a plug for a talk that will be given next Tuesday by Jorge Silvetti, a talk that's in honor of Professor Edward Seckler, who sadly passed away some months ago, and this will be followed with a discussion together with Professor Toshiko Mori. But please welcome Professor John May, who will make the introduction.
Thank you, Mohsen, and again, welcome to all the visitors and to Patricia and her family is here with us tonight. Jean Baudrillard once remarked that for centuries modern thought lived off the splendor of the subject and the poverty of the object regarded as inert material, the province of superficial passions and pursuits and unworthy of contemplation. It was the subject, the self, that warranted serious consideration lest it be corrupted by the world of objects. To be human on that view was precisely to escape or avoid objecthood. Today, after more than a century of cultural experimentation with systems and processes aimed at closing the distance between the realms of subject and object, and I'm thinking here of cybernetics and ergonomics to name just two, such distinctions prove far more difficult to establish. And the design disciplines themselves now thrive in part because we have grown more comfortable with the notion that we do not live alongside our objects, but rather through our objects. If my life is lived out through my objects, are they not somehow a part of me rather than apart from me? Such notions should not be dismissed as expressions of crass materialism, but rather seen as a simple acknowledgement that lived life does not fit neatly into ideal categories. It's with these thoughts in mind that I want to welcome Patricia to join us tonight and to share with us her remarkable work. Work in which subjects and objects are always drawn into one another, sharing one another's company, comforting one another. If design is always, in a sense, an act of immersion in Patricia's work at every scale, we find a special kind of immersion that is at once intense and comfortable, emphatic and subtle. Patricia Urquiola studied architecture and design at Madrid Polytechnic and Milan Polytechnic, worked with Vico Magistretti, and later as the head of design at Lissoni Associati. In 2001, she opened her own studio with her partner Alberto, who joins us here tonight as well, working on product design, architecture, and installations. Amongst her latest projects in architecture are the Jewelry Museum in Vicenza, the Mandarin Oriental Hotel in Barcelona, the Spa of Four Seasons Hotel in Milan, showrooms and installations for BMW, Cassina, and others. Patricia creates design products for the most important Italian and international companies, and her work is displayed in numerous museums and collections, including MoMA, the Museum of Design in Munich, the Vitra Design Museum in Basel, Design Museum in London, Victoria and Albert, among others. She is the recipient of numerous awards, including the Gold Medal in Fine Arts awarded by the Spanish government, the Order of Isabel the Catholic by His Majesty the King of Spain, Juan Carlos I, Designer of the Decade for 2 German magazines, Home and Hauser, Designer of the Year for Wallpaper, AD Spain, El Decor, you get the idea. Patricia was the ambassador of the Milan Expo in 2015, and she was nominated art director for Cassina in September 2015. So please help me welcome Patricia here.
Allora, just a second. Tac. Good evening. Here we are. Allora, how to tell you a lot of things in a short time, because I have a lot of images. Well, first thing, I will go on this, no? Possibly the last period. I'm trying to understand a little bit how I've been working the last, especially the last 16, 17 years. I opened the studio at the beginning of the millennium, and in some way, my way of working and living has been a little bit a kind of rhizomatic way. Then I still thinking that many people ask to us, Patricia, are you involved in design, in architectura? Are you doing these kind of things? Many things are happening, and I'm open more and more to new disciplines, and I'm going to tell you. Here you see, being a progettista, which is the way that we say in Italiano, designer, and progetto is nice to use it as to relate to yourself as progettista. We know we have a kind of more than a footprint, is a kind of handprint. A lot of things we do, they keep on. And we have to think about the responsibility. Ecco. And as we know, Italo Calvino came to one of his lectures, ecco, and the sixth point of his memos was the consistency. And it's an argument that I love because it was the only lesson that was lost, was unfinished. And as you know, all the arguments that interest him were not only, you know, a problem about the future as visibility or lightness. It was the relation between lightness and heaviness, or the consistency and the inconsistency. An argument that I love, because I still thinking that the only way to be to work in a consistent way is to have comunque parentheses of inconsistency, how to be light in the way you get your own consistency. That images are for my thesis of laurea I did with Achille Castiglioni. I had the honor to work with him a little bit in university and to end my thesis with him. And I was doing a lot of drawings that I was looking at them the other day, and they were all with the idea of a system. My idea was to think about domesticity as a system, and the idea of relate the space we live with the other systems, and these are kind of sustainable attitude that in the 80s was not called in that way. Then I always remember, and I make a lot of fun thinking about then how was my old mind in those days. After years and years, things happened that possibly, I tell you, if I show you this image with the extended face, you know, that's the moment in between the analogic world and the virtual world, because the moment when you want to translate yourself to a virtual drawing, you need to do all your photos, then you do a standard surface, then you have yourself, and then another time you put it another time. around an egg and you create your virtual side. I think I am a generation which is in between the analogic and the virtual world, and possibly in between the humanistic education, which is strongly important in my education. I'm a woman with a book, always with little books, a booklet, and I say to my daughters, I hope you remember me with a book. That I think in some way, and doesn't mean anything. I think future is going to be always more a mix of things, you know. We know that it's not going to be only one thing that is going to become another one. There's going to be an implementation of many arguments. But I was saying, possibly my life now is in between working in doing furniture. I still been a designer. I had an industrial designer. I had a career of industrial design, very lucky one, in Milano, in Italy, then extended to other places. But in my profession was that, a univocal relation in between you and the company. And more the last 10 years, this equation got broken. And the concept of craft and technology, they became arguments much more fresh and interesting. Then I'm working now in many other ways. I'm working with designers and people which are working already in a virtual way. Then we will speak about. You know, I still think as a rhizomatic thing or way of thinking. You know, you get like the Pink Panther. You know, Deleuze and Guattari. They were saying became as Pink Panther. Pink Panther. She was like, you know, she was fluent. She was like a vector. When she had a problem, she became the pink, because pink was her ambient. She became part of it. Then, you know, always this idea of being curious and getting connected, and connection in between all the companies I work. Many times I'm working as designer, I'm criticizing, and at the end I'm doing a work of architecture for them, because I do another kind of discussion, which is not the one that should be for the day. And bit by bit, all these kind of interconnections I've done in my work, they make me become a kind of art director for a company as Cassina, but we will speak about. I think as Miranda July is a woman, I think a kind of artist that I'm very interested about the way she's understanding and trying to work and thinking about. And, you know, connected with many other kind of things. That photo was done at Alberto, we did 15 days ago. We were in Tokyo. We are doing a work of architecture there, and my clients make me go to a level, and they were doing this. They were working like this, and then I love it that moment, because you know that was Japan in the way it is. There was New York in scale, and there was Tokyo nearby, and they were just doing a kind of comparison in between them. That was very interesting, and I was thinking, you know, as you know. We are in the age of earthquakes, and things are changing a lot. Possibly we are I'm part of the last generation that dies. That I'm sure about. I love this back of this book that is saying, in any case, we are the last generation that dies. And you can understand it as a metaphor or as you want, but for me it's important. I think we have to manage, because we know already how we are gonna, who's gonna take care in this new revolution, cyber revolution, or biotechnological revolution of picking up our garbage, or who's going to take care, how's going to be our relation with our pets, or our cyber pets. I love this image of an artist which is putting together this kind of man, you know, a little bit this mess, with this kind of cyber robot, or, you know, this idea of taking care that I see always all these kind of engines now that they give you for your pets. Possibly we will need to use them for our cyborgs. That was common. Possibly, you know, what is happening is that we changed the structure of our planet, and we have to understand how to move on it, and we will have to understand many things. I'm very curious about this argument. And I was, for example, here, I had a relation with Olaf Aureliasson. We were doing a car, me with another creative, another was a kind of designer artist. We were doing a kind of car for BMW. And in that period, he was doing another car. The car was related with the time and with the concept of ice. I like it a lot, the concept. And when I was seeing that image, makes me think something we did two summers ago. We needed to do a travel, 12 people. We've been in a boat. We went nearby from Iceland till Greenland. And we were with any kind of connection for 15 days. And we annihilated everything. We were speaking in between us, and a lot of doing little drawings, communicating in between us, trying to not discuss too much. And it's been a moment very, very intuitive and very strong for us. At the end of the travel, we came back, and I became a very good friend of one of the person that was there, and we are doing different kind of projects together. Well, I go on like this. I want to know what I show you, and then to move. Just to make you understand a little bit of my way of approaching the profession from the 2000 that I opened the studio. It was the beginning of the millennium I opened the studio. In the 2006 and 2005, we did an exhibition. There was the fantastic Helen Jungerius doing another exhibition at the same time in that fair. And you had to do a kind of your ideal house. And when I was doing my ideal house was a kind of unfinished house. There was not a real construction. It was a kind of scaffolding house. It was just rented place. Everything you can put and you can give it away. And all the items done with my companies of design. They were done unfinished and finished in a crafted way. Then a lot of friends of me were asking, but Patrick, why they are crafted? We don't understand your idea. I couldn't explain so well. Now, after many years, I know. I think from that period, I was thinking that possibly the new binomio will be more in between a kind of new attitude to craft in another way, to find another way to understand the technology and possibilities. Industrial design has a memory which is connected to create only in series and needs always to clean in a certain way. And technologies are giving us possibilities very different. Then possibly is not anymore the only paradox or the only way of thinking. At the same time, 1 year after, we did another exhibition about the studio, and it was very intuitive exhibition. It was the day we opened the exhibition, the day that Vico died. Vico Magistrati was for me a mentor and a person really important, a kind of bridge for my profession. I was educated in the period of postmodern. You can imagine how far away. And when I moved from Madrid to Milano to end my studies, Vico was a kind of rationalist, but with a kind of irony, and as Castiglione, they were creating another kind of bridge to what for me is modernity, or what could be for me the idea of thinking design in another way. That were the shadows of the exhibition, of all the little items we had, and the shadows were the best thing of the exhibition. That is a professional work we did for Ferran Adrià, this chef in the city of Ibiza, and it was a professional work done with artists working with algorithm, very interesting, and we were working in many ways because they were working through art, through the way they were cooking. It was a special, and I learned a lot. It was the day before we were opening, and I remember like a moment of a big emotion. Here is my studio. I introduce it. We have the house. This is a kind of warehouse, and in the top of it there is our house, personal house. Then I have my two families living together. And there is my dog, and there is an architect's dog. They are really near. They are looking the same, and many people do confusion between them. And we work with hands. We use the 3D printing. We do a lot of computers, everything. As we can imagine, we are there for 4 years because I asked Alberto for a long time to move to a place that could be my my studio and my laboratory and everything together. And in that period, we did a book. I was telling a little bit my intention about design. In that way, it was a book more about design. And the book was signed. There were no chapters. There were only dog ears, big dog ears, because I am a kind of person that always signs things. And the way to love books is always como que signing and writing and doing dog ears. There is another kind of tribu, which is far away from that. Then I wanted that my book was intended the way I take care of them. And for introducing the book in the first exhibition, we did in Milano, in this little gallery, all the pages of the book, and I put them all around the space. And in all of them, for 1 month, me and the gallerist, we were sending images of each page, and we were drawing on the drawings. Then we were interpreting all of them, and then I was finishing a drawing, he was finishing another one. We were sending one to the other one, images from the book, and then it was a kind of playful or a project on the project. With Federico Pepe, the person that has the Dictateur, the gallery, we are doing different things. This is, for example, an exercise of a really traditional design. We are working in the way that, is not anymore possible, trying to do micro collection of these little cabinets. And the cabinets working with this man who is working with glass, like normally he was working for churches and things like this. Now he's working only for pizzerias. And then he was a little bit desperate in the way to use this kind of manufacturing, so old and so lost. And we did that work. We are doing together my website. And we are doing a project for Salone del Mobile that will be a VR project, where there will be anything analogic. There will be only a kind of immersion. And well, I hope we have the time to do it, because we are running, and the Salone is coming quite quick in April. But I'm really involved in this project. I had the luck 2 years ago to become the art director of a company which is one of the most classical companies that created, I think, the concept of design in Italia. The company, the name is Cassina, and is the one that is taking care of all the Le Corbusier, Héritier, and many other important designers and architects. It's not now that I'm going to explain a lot about this, but what I wanted to say that we did this last Salone del Mobile, then in April, we did the 90 years of the company. Then there was we did to do a book, to tell, and I was saying, when you are 90 years old, you have to do como que in another way. We have to think about future, and you have to have another kind of intention. The way that we look at future, there are many kind of future in front of us, and how to relate this, our past, our legacy, and to not make people, I think we still being all, golden fishes with this short memory. I think my daughters of my daughters, or the song of my songs, they will never understand that como que there was an item done by Le Corbusier or by another designer, and they were done by a company done in a certain way, and they have to understand something. Then how was the story of all those companies that keep the concept of quality, and they gave us como que a legacy to understand how to deal with certain arguments. Then we were doing a book which is related to future. We worked with interesting photographers, and we were doing a kind of 5 or 6 conversation with different intellectuals and architects and designers, speaking about different ways of what we think about the future. The book is quite interesting. There are a lot of things inside, and we were all the year working on it, and it was very interesting. We worked with a curator from New York, Burichter, Felix Burichter, which is a friend of me too, and that was como que the idea for introducing the book and the party, the celebration of the company. We did a kind of we said we are not going to do the 90 years of Cassina. We are going to do Cassina 9.0, or 0.0. It's going to be como a kind of metaphor of implementation in digital era. We cannot say we are going to do 90 years. We are going to think about what is, the next 10 or the next point something we are going to grow. And we did it in a building that was newborn in the city of Milano, which is the Fondazione Feltrinelli, and by Erzo de Meron. And I wanted that people arriving to the city could come and be with us using this space for a new place. Inside, we were using the Refuge Tonneau, which is something we have, which is all the piece of our heritage. And people were asking me if it was a new item. And we were using the library, which is in the top, in the day as a public space, but in the evening, we were using like a theater place. Then there were actors playing with people, and then became a kind of crazy place where everybody could interact. Well, I was always saying to them, I'm a big lover of Georges Perec, and the idea of this photo of him already in this laying on a bed, standing, is a metaphor of our future, which is going to be perhaps a little bit horizontal. That was the way we did the installation inside the building. One level of the building was with the library, as I was telling you. Another level was with this kind of disrupted space that was a kind of house, a house looking like a very classic house, but was not so classical because these pinky walls, they were coming out images from them. Then I'm sure that in the future, mostly of our surfaces, they are going to be interactive surfaces. Then we were playing and doing a very playful work. For example, there was a bed, which is a bed which is historical in the company. When you were sitting on the bed, the wall was coming out and was telling you things. And they were having, the items from Cassina. They were physically, but other things were happening. And in all the rooms, when you were touching something, things were reacting to you. Then it's not important. This wall was always speaking and telling you what was happening. Another wall was reacting when you were sitting. Then a lot of things were happening in that place. And then there was a kind of disruption with this kind of curtain that you have to cross over. And then they were happening in a space that was more virtual. Then there was the green room where you get inside and then only a few items for Cassina. And when you get inside, you were in the video, you were inside another space. Or they were happening projections in part of the surfaces in different ways. And that was there was we reproduced this typology, this of an old typology of sofa from the 70s that's absolutely modern now, and we were using as a place that you were using in a new way. With the same company, I'm working as designer. They wanted me to work in different layers, working as architect, working with the way we are doing the showrooms, working inside the company, how to put together new designers. We are working now with Konstantin Griches, with Brothers Burolek, people that I think there were poets of my generation that were not in Cassina, and I wanted to add them to the incredible group of persons that been working in the company. I was doing my work. When you do your work, that is the quotidianity of your work, then being there, small spaces, discussing with them, that's part of my life too. Then doing the photos, or the photography with, or how to tell the idea of living. Then reproducing for the fairs and for the exhibitions things. For example, Rietveld was we have part of the production of Rietveld. Then we wanted to reproduce a space in an exhibition we did in Germany and in Milano, recreating this space from Rietveld. Then that is part of my work, always interacting with the spaces, with thinking. This was another one of the exhibitions, and now we are preparing now for one from Cologne, and thinking a new exhibition will be connected with Salone del Mobile. Then it's part of my quotidianity with them. That is another project we have done. It's about gender. I wanted from the beginning to speak with the company about a prejudice. I think we have to break every day our prejudice, and there was one strongly with women, I think, in the company. It was a company. I remember a journalist saying to me, but you are a woman connected with color and very vivid, and working for Cassina, which is so architectonical and severe. And he was putting his hand on a table from a woman who's been working for a long time with the company. Then I was saying, perhaps we still having a lot of prejudices, and we need to have a gender item and a gender collection. Then we are going to. It's not only defending, female rights. It's about understanding about all the gray and all the passages of gender we have in our society, and thinking about this argument with a new point of view. I can't ever anymore. Then there's a lot of discussions. We did a lot of little talks in the company, in London, in a few places, and it's been very interesting argument. We are playing with this. He's my little app. I'm PU. My name is PU, and then he's up the country, and he has a little how do you say? Wings echo that I did with my 3D printing, and he's my alter ego for all this argument. Well, we did this, that was a chair that is an armchair that is changing always. It's very well done, with upholstery done in an incredible way, with movements inside, and it's comunque as a Zelig, can change a lot the point of view and then the relation with people. That was one of the other projects we are doing together, and all this. That is a company. The company is an old company. Then we needed to work as architects and reuse and refine the basis of the industrial architecture we had. Then we've been cleaning for 1 year, and then I have a program for the next 3 years, and we are going to create a kind of pop-up spaces for the museum heritage, and I'm working on it. Then everybody is very interested, Capito, and how we are working, and then we are reusing places, we are taking away things, we are creating places that were dismissed, changing the attitude. Well, I'm opening another window. This is my work with Hayworth. It's an American company. It's a company that they asked me to do a kind of art direction, but not a clear art direction. It should be a kind of art direction, but not saying it. Then what we are doing for 5 years, in this case, is just working in anything. For example, that they have a Bluescape, which is a very technological wall that you can connect and work from 3 parts of the world at the same time. And it's always very boring, the way they connect and they explain to people, and it's very expensive. And I always say to them, why don't we put 3 artists, one from Barcelona, one in the West Coast, and one was in Chicago, and they can draw all together in all the week in Neocon, and they are going to be interacting in the same drawings, like a murales. And we did it, and it was the first time that people, I think, were connected with this kind of technology in another way. This company is asking us to do items which are thinking the spaces we live and work in a more soft way. Then paravent elements that you can move in an easy way, more flexibility items. We are working in all the fabrics. I was saying that in the moment we are going to work in this company with those materials, wood and fabrics, I cannot do anything. Then we re-began to think all the fabrics, and there are 5 collections complete of materials. Then I'm eliminating the possibility of using materials as they were using for a long time. And I'm very proud because we are doing it in America and then in USA, and they are very interesting. We are creating departments special for that. We are working in items. Well, I'm working always with friends, photographers, that we go in the company, and when we are there, we do photos with another point of view like this. We move the attitude of this Michigan company, Capito. And but we are moving many things, and I think we are in Neocon. We are playing a lot. Normally, when we do the exhibitions in Neocon, we have the spaces. For example, Giulio Capellini is this incredible man. He's been very important for design in Italia, and he discovered Jasper Morrison, Brothers Burlek, people really interesting. And he was at the beginning very impressive at the beginning of '80s, and he's working with us because he's part of a team we are working. And for example, that was a presentation of a table, a double table, no? And the way I was speaking with a teacher from the University of Michigan, and we were doing a kind of little algorithm, and the table was, when you were touching items with colors over the table table was creating a kind of flow of a river of color. Then the approach of telling the idea of the new surfaces in the future I think lighting in the top of a meeting table will be comunque always a projector of things, will be comunque an emotional relation with all those items, very, very different. And then we were comunque doing a lot of research with them. For example, here is one of my friends from the university there, that we were doing in this room, all the little rooms they have. I put always little items, and when you touch them, the room reacts. Then all the glasses, they tell you a story, so they get in relation with you. Bueno, this is the lady that made me, put me on the spot. She believed in me, and I became a designer because of her. She's Patrizia Moroso, and she's doing a company of tendency more furniture for sitting, especially. Then for a long time, I was doing coaches and things for sitting, because it was the first thing I did. Then when you are young, you begin doing something, you do that. Then bit by bit, we opened to other typologies and things. But she's a woman who does an incredible relation with all the designers. She's opening always new ways of thinking, and I think her approach is very interesting. We did a travel in Scandinavia, and I came back with her, and I said to her, we are going to do a fjord. That's going to be a fjord, a new chair, which is a bit asymmetrical, and that was an item that gave us a big value to the company. We did photos of this fjord armchair in the beach where I grew up, in the north of Spain. I'm Spanish, but I'm Atlantic. I'm not, I'm Spanish. I live in Italy for more than 30 years. Then I arrived as a student in Italy, but you know, my Cote Spanish side is more Basque and Atlantic. Then it's something important to understand. That's not, possibly my Mediterranean side is more Milanese, which is not so much. Then a lot of prejudices, people, when they want to understand my Patrizia is connected with color, then folklore, folklore nothing, it's pipes, what they play in my countryside. Then it's not very important to explain always everything. Things goes. We did an exhibition with this lady that was Backstage, the name, and she was using all items which were halfway, they were a little bit dismissed, they were unfinished, and it was a very interesting exhibition. With her, we did many other things, as the antibody project. We did that other project, I liked it a lot. It was very experimental. We were doing this kind of strong, I don't know how to say, that element, and we played with it. We did a lot of coaches, we did a lot of seats, a lot of things too. We worked with silicons and other materials, and I like it a lot. And in the moment I was working with Patrizia, after a bit I began to have a relation with B&B, which is another company I worked for 14 years, and was the company I was working till I began to work with Cassina. This company has been a company that is strong in the way that they investigated and invented a new way to do molds, industrial molds. Then it was really industrial design. With them we were doing a lot of, this is a plastic injection with a kind of cushions on it. This is a sofa that we did in a certain way, just finding new technologies. We do now a kind of new mold which is done for outdoor, that normally you don't do for outdoor anything which is molded in foam. Then we got that, we crossed that barrier, and they are very interested in that way. We did a collection for outdoor, which is strongly, for doing that work, I said to them, I'm going to go in Asia. We were in Philippines. I'm going to do a kind of workshop with the people there. Like this, we can do something well, because if not, I think we are going to work, and I need to be with them and working. Then we've been one week there, I remember, and we were all together. We created a kind of little theater, and anything we were finishing the day, we were putting on the place, and we were trying. And we did 3 collections that they go on for a long time. There's another chair which is done with a Spanish company that they are good friends for me for many years, and sometimes we do a kind of injection, something which is sample, and we go on. Floss is an Italian company of lighting, and we've been doing a few items that is different collections connected with different arguments I'm interested. This is a work of glass. I've been always really interested in how I don't I'm not really, I love glass in architecture and in other dimensions, but in design, I don't like it a lot. I like it in tableware, possibly, but in the dimension of furniture thing, I always thought with tables, you always see through, then you see, I get really disturbed. I'm too much curious about what is happening through that glass. Then they asked me in this company, which they do a lot of research, to come and work with them to find new ways to use new technologies on glass. Then we were working with shimmer, and it's been very interesting, the way we were working with that. This one of the tables I had in my studio is always created in my room, como que images like that. That's my room in the studio. We are working now with this kind of new material. We call it the liquify, and we put it in the middle of two glasses, and at the end, when you get nearby the table is moving. Then this kind of marble is moving when you move around the table. Then it's interesting effects. I'm interested. We are working a lot now with these kind of images, which are related with digital world, and is part of our work. But I can work in that thing in a much more traditional and crafted way. That is a company which is a very good friend of me, and they work in Tibet and Nepal, and they are doing this kind of very traditional carpets, but they are related to my three-dimensional world. Then in some way, connecting things in another way. That's a work that I thought always that working in bidimensional surfaces will be limitative, and I learned in the last years that was a prejudice too. They gave me the possibility of finding new technologies and things very, very interesting. That, for example, was GAN, a company that they work out in India in that case, and the process of working with them is very strong. For example, here we were working with a team of ladies, women, that they can work half of the day in a community way. They sit on the floor, they work in like this. They don't want to have big things because they need to do and to take it home and work partially in home. Then I did all the projects related to them. They are, the name of those bandas, they are 60 centimeters long little pieces of carpet, and then they work each one in one of them, and then they put them together with work. This work we are working now for there is the Magis allora. With this work, we are doing now work which is in Barcelona, which is a space which is going to be nearby a hospital where people have to go to take care of the hospital for tumors and tumori, no? So it's good to know how to say in English. And we are doing this space with Beretta Tagliabue, and I'm creating the inside of the space. Then we are finding a way to do a kind of kitchen. How could be for me this concept of kitchen? How will be the community table? How will be como a soft space? Then all this project is getting inside that architectonical project. And many times my project of design, they are really connected with my other profession, which is architecture. Then for me, all those spaces in between those different professions, they are very important. And I still thinking that I've been very lucky to study in Milan in a moment where the faculty of Architectura was really a bit lost, and then you were studying design and architecture at the same time. And I think it's coming back another time. I think all the disciplines, they need to be much more related. And I still trying to do in my work that thing. For example, that are photos that they were sending me from India, and I was saying to them, send me videos, photos, anything, every day, because I can stop part of the process and we can do different things. And that is just to make you, from an image from an artist, which is thinking the space in another way, or from these images they were sending to me of those ladies working every day on that. It's been something that made me grow a lot. With the same company now, I said to them, we are going to find new fibers, which are much more technological, and they can be done for outdoor. And we created a new collection, which is looking like a very gentle collection for indoor, but is absolutely outdoor. Resistant. That's fun because I'm here with Alberto, and then you will see the couple speaking many times. That is one of the images of introduction. That is a normal moment in the studio. This photo was done just, I think, when I arrived from Japan 10 days ago, and we were trying to put all the carpets a certain way. I like these moments because you are, you do a lot of crossover. In the studio, we work in many ways, but prototyping is very strong. Then many times you arrive and you can go from one room to the other one because there's always someone doing something in the middle of. Pero bueno. For outdoor, we did other collections with Quetal, which is a Spanish company, and I'm doing the architecture for them. I'm doing the booths for them. Then I'm not only working as a designer. Or, for example, this is a gallery, which is art gallery, which is Nilufar, and they do a lot of research with a few designers, and we work in silicons, in other materials, in copper, in materials that I can do with Industria. There is a lady that came to us a few years ago asking us to work with part of her marble. And I was saying, no, marble, no, Alberto, no, I'm not going to work with that. I think marble is already a material. And for me, clean, I'm an architect, and I wanted to have only this relation with very clean marble, and no. Then after saying no for 2 years, then we began to work. And she had a kind of earthquake that crosses the company, and we are working, and we're still doing a lot of work with all the things that nobody wants in the company. All the B side of the company is my material. And then we do a lot of things she has robots of 2, 3, 4, and 5 axes. Then she has a very high technology to work, and we do a lot of things, and everything we do is with all the material that nobody wants. She always said to me that this period we have this and this and this, and we play with it. This, for example, they are stone, part of marble that is with big holes, and then we put silicone in the middle, and we create surfaces, which I think they are incredibly interesting. These are pieces that we were doing nothing. Or this is with the machine of 5 axes. We were working with marble in a very interesting way, and creating. Or we are working with wood and marble. As you see, it's always reusing what the waste of the company. That is something I like a lot. There are a few years we are working together. There's another company of surfaces, which the name is Mutina, and in this case they do ceramic. Ceramic tiles for me was another word I think was lost. And then I discovered that there is an incredible technology. For example, now we are working with a new technology that the name is Continua. This is made in Continua. We can work in tiles which are, long 3 meters, 1 meter, and you can arrive to thinner as, I don't know, in inches and in very, very thin, but half of what is normal for ceramic. And Continua means the technology with a very big machine that they print in 3 layers, and they work in a way that anything, the waste of the ceramic, they don't use quite water. For doing ceramic, normally you use a lot of water. All the waste gets another time inside. Then it's continuous cycle. Then it's a really new technology, and we are learning a lot. And all my prejudices about these things, they got broken. If you see the work in that side, in the left is ceramic tile. In any case, we work in many ways. We do cellulosis. We work. These are printed, that they are much more simplified. This is big tiles, which are those long ones done in Continua, and we are working in a lot of surfaces. Then this is a quite interesting way. These people from Mutina, I spoke with another company that they were working in wood, and they came because they got a new machines of control numeric, and they wanted to do some prints on the wood. And I said to them, I'm not going to do print. Then I don't know if you want to work with me. And then for 1 year we didn't speak about. And then after 1 year they come back another time. They came back, and we decided to do this kind of modular items. They are cut in a way which normally with a normal technique of parquet you cannot do it. Then we are using the control numeric for this kind of new floor. Then the company created new spaces, and we are using all those machines in a way that was not the way they were thinking they will use. Then I like a lot to change their mind or move their limits. And it's coming a very interesting work. We are doing a lot of work. They came to me from Bofi. speaking to do a kitchen. And a kitchen for me, that was my idea of this kind of connective metal frame with only little pieces of metal or little pieces of ceramic all around, but not using, the melaminic boxes which are always inside the kitchen, which for me is an old way to do things. I think it's much better to do a frame and to use much less material. And they listened to us, and we did this concept kitchen, and which is we did in 2 years, and now they are 3 years they are selling, and it's a kind of canvas. They work with it with many materials, and we are adding new materials. And it's a way of working in a kitchen which is not designing one kitchen, it's designing a system, a capital of kitchen. Or, for example, things like Georg Jensen, that they only work in steel, then we've been working with them in some way. Then that was a very delicate work. Or working, they call us from, that was a few years ago, in Venice, and they said, you have 3 months, you have to go only 5-6 times in the morning for 3 hours, and you have to do this collection of vetro, and with the maestro. And I was saying, I don't know, I don't know, because you have short time, the maestro is terrifying expensive. Then you have to use your time in a very good way, and it's really craft. Then it was not my work. Then we began to do all this work, and we created. It was incredibly fun. I enjoyed it a lot. If you see those wooden pieces, they are the elements you use to work with the glass, because it's incandescent. It's so hot that your hands are wooden things. And if you see the little drawing here, this one. This is in the floor. I was doing all the drawings because Maestro only understood drawings on the floor. My drawings, he didn't like it. And these handles he was putting in his hands. He was putting them in water, and then he was you want like this? Anything he was doing with his felter hands and water. It was from my mind to his hands to the materia. And we did this vase. You see this one. And at the end of all the collection, I think it was my homage to him. It was his hands on the vase. It was the only one I liked at the end, or the one I liked the most. I worked for 4 years with Rosenthal. That was a very long work. I thought I learned a lot about porcelain, but then I worked in Japan in another way, and it was completely different. Then you never know anything. The process is always a white canvas or a new white page. But it's been very interesting that we're prototyping done in the studio. We found a way to communicate with Germany to really do a lot of things in the studio. Then all the process, at the end, a museum in Germany bought the whole process. Then I was very happy because we really worked with a lot of aim in that work. When we were doing that work, there was Cartel, which is a plastic company from Italia. And I know I'm a very good friend of the owner. He was so jealous. He was saying, no, I want something from you like the porcelain things. Then, I don't know. Then after, the porcelain project, I ended 5 years ago. Then 2 years ago, I did in plastic. I got this kind of material work, which is related to my work done in porcelain. And at the same time, I was working in Japan in little things, using monkey grass, using materials in a certain way. We were working. Then. What I always understood is even any kind of process you get and you think is never enough. I love because the moment you create a new relation with someone else, the way you work with them change all the things. Then at the end, for me, I think you have to be willing to grow. I think the concept of growing for me is very important. It's the only one to me that is important. This kind of attitude, I think, is the only one I believe. For example, I've been working with companies that work in bathtub and things like this, but we were working in a material. But then they arrived from Laufen, and they had a new invention of a new, very, very thin way of doing ceramic. Incredible. It's a new patent, and all the rules changed another time. Then it's been very interesting to work with them. We did all this work, and then in that period I was working with the digital artist, which is very connected with me now. Then all the images, all the photos you see here, they are looking photos, but they are all done in digital. Then now I am doing a research in a graphical way, which is changing in between photography and now. That is a museum of jewels inside the Palladio building, and then is historical building, incredible. Then for doing the museum, they said to me, you can do everything, but you cannot touch any wall and floor. They would say, then we will put light with candles, because it's impossible to do it. Then nobody minded about it. They said, you cannot touch anything. Then we found in a way that was inside the Venetian Seminato, to go inside to find a way that you don't find where lights come from. Then I'm very happy about the project, because it was really impossible to do it. And we find a way to get the way to have those magical boxes, and you don't understand why the electrical and electronical parts arrive to the things. Then I created like micro architectures, and inside them everything arrives and happens. With another exhibition that was very nice in Milano about hotels. I've been working in hotels the last years, and we did an exhibition. It was very interesting for me. I was doing, for me, if a hotel is in an exhibition, I will do the room for one, which is for me is very important, because it's the room where you feel, you know, in a room where so all the items are related to you, and it's thought in a certain way. The room for two. And it, for me, is a moment when you have a relation with another one. The room is not so important, because it's part of the argument, but it's very important, the idea of this. And we did a kind of bed that was a double bed, you know, crossed bed, and was critical. And then I did a room for three, Ecco. The room for three, there was with these baldachins, very fun. And then the idea of, I get with three friends, of three of us, and then each one closed his space, and we were related to a baldachin that was done in the 50s in a Triennale di Milano, very interesting. And then we were doing an idea of new spaces for taking care of your body and wellness and blah, blah. We did a hotel in Vieques, Ecco, now destroyed, Ecco, by the hurricane. You say the hurricane? And they called me. I say, Patricia, we have a lot of problems. We have this W hotel in this little island, very crazy, and we have to redo now to work on it. Then it's coming back to my memory. The hotel, I was long time in the island to understand the island and to do a work that was related to the place in an intelligent way, with flip-flops and in an easy way, and using all the energy in the right way and energy in the right way too. Then that was the first prototype of my armchair with B&B. Those lights were done with a friend of me in Puerto Rico. Those lights we did with ladies from the island. This one was a bathtub that nobody wanted to do, and I found one Italian that did it for me. But we used many people from Puerto Rico nearby, and this was the bathtub that was is the Vieques bathtub. I was very happy to have it. It was in metal, and I didn't want to do, you know, bubbles or, you know, this kind of sophisticated bathtub that they were asking me for the hotel. Then I translate in another way, and well, these are histories of a project. O Mandarin Oriental it's been a building, a very serious work, working with a big chain, a citizen hotel, and I said I will be never good for that. And but they changed my prejudices, because they gave me a lot of freedom. We did a lot of things, and I had it was a good research. And now after 3 years, we did another part of the building. Then we working in quality, no more than in looks. Then for me, it's been very interesting the way we've been working. Then those are apartments which are inside, and we did the tiles, we did a lot of items for it. Oh, that's, for example, is a little hotel in Milano, which is very low price, very easy, in the middle of the city, and the only bigger space is this one, and it's connected with my memories of Milano. Then it's a place for me with the sensation of what, for me, this is that represents the city. And my budget was low, was not so big, but we played the game in a certain way, and I'm very happy about it. We are finishing now the spa of this hotel in the Lake of Como, which is an hotel that we did all the architecture. It's really insert in the architecture. If you see it in the, you know, you have the mountains coming to the lake in a very strong way, and we find the way to create this base that was historical, and then to create the hotel with all those paravents you see in wood, that everybody, the person which are in the rooms inside the loggias, they move them, then the facade of the building is always in movement. There is no technology, there is human technology. Yes, you just move them, and the facade is always giving you new possibilities. We insert a lot of elements. We work it with in a sustainable way, in a very interesting way. Then I learned a lot. I love these works that I can say I learned a lot. And we're still learning, because we bought now another part of the building, we are adding another place, and we are all the time trying to, how to do this word, and all this hotel, which is inserted in the Genius Loggia, in the place. We are using this stone that you see there, which is a stone which is Ceppo Lombardo, from Lombardia, from the place. And I had to make the material to my clients, because they wanted to have a kind of better stone. And I said, that's the right one, because it's poor and it's perfect for the place. And we've been doing a lot of things inside. It's been a work very interesting. It's my idea, for example, my palette. They were asking me, which is the idea of colors? The colors is stone, wood, green, a bit of blue, because there is a sky, but nothing else. No colorama. And the rooms they were giving me, I said to them, I'm going to use less meters for the room, but I'm going to have always a loggia, a space which is a bigger space outside. Then perhaps if it's a nice summer night, you sleep outside. Who knows? Then my idea was to create change a little bit the typologies and the limits. We worked with control numeric in many materials. For example, this is a wall which is done in marble, but working always with control numeric research. I like a lot to find ways to use all the technologies of the people I know. Then always is a laboratorio for doing things. Or doing exhibition. I'm doing a new exhibition in the Triennale di Milano. I cannot say, because they said to me to wait a little bit, and it's going to be in September, next September. But I did another exhibition a few years ago. It was about time. And this exhibition was for me very important, because it made me think about the concept of time. I still thinking that for me, you have to find your own fast tracks. At the entrance of the exhibition, I put two doors. One door was a fast track, and the other one was an informal, stupid hole. Then you have to choose the entrance. If you were going through the fast track, as many journalists did, you went outside with the red carpet, very easy, and you didn't seek by the exhibition. You went through the stupid hole, you were the stupid curious, and then you were a stupid person getting inside the whole of it. And then my idea was, what you have to understand, fast track, okay, acceleration, okay, speed, okay, but for what? Which are your own fast tracks? We have to think about our concept of time, and I think it's the only humanistic side we have to still keep in this digital era. We have to understand well in how are our interspace, intertimes, how to relate this concept of time. And all the exhibition was incredible. There were 100 designers and artists thinking about time. We did you know, this is you see the red carpet in the middle. You did like this, out, and you were going outside in a second. Then you couldn't see anything. And I said, there is no time machine. We cannot do this exhibition and we don't have a time machine. And nobody gave to us. Then I do it. Then I went to do a time machine. I said, I'm going to do an exercise. It was summer. In 15 days, because we opened quite at the end of September, I went to Moroso, one of my companies, and I said, I don't ask for anything. I'm going to use things we have already here. But I want that you give me someone helping me. I'm going to do a time machine. As time machine, they are the only stupid time machines that we still have in. They are only from science fiction, you say? They are the only ones that I'm interested about. Because then the teletransport that is still being an argument like this, we are going to work. And then we did this kind of putting things, items and pieces of my items all together. We created this kind of the bag. She's lovely, Capito. And if you see, it was lovely to see the father, the mother, the people working in the company saying what she's doing now. And it was not easy to explain to them, because it was a kind of, it was an action work. I was thinking there were Louis Bourgeois, there was manga, there was science fiction. There were a lot of things in my mind, and we put them together, and with those lamps, we put the wings, Echo, and then we put everything together, and bit by bit, the piece came within 15 days, and all those things were inside. I like to always to see this image, because it really was like this. And everybody said, what they are doing. At the end, the back came out, and we had a time machine and was in exhibition. At the end of the exhibition, we did the first research I've done with an algorithm. I think algoritmo is part of my life. I'm not an engineer. I'm a daughter of an engineer. But I say, Papa, but you needed to teach me something about algorithm many years ago. I'm not ready for my era. And we did with one of the guys of the studio, this little one. There was a little drawing, and there were the white rabbit of Alice in Wonderland, which is jumping in an idiot way. And when you cross the room, he comes after you, and he says to you, there's no more time, you have to go, you have to leave. Then it was very nice, the exhibition. From that exhibition, I show you now we are doing, it's going to be open, I think, in 1 week in a design museum in London, and the new fantastic place they have, an exhibition about Ferrari. And we did already the exhibition, this is the exhibition we did already with the design museum in Maranello, in Italy. And now this exhibition is coming to the design museum. Then we are very proud, we are waiting for the opening. And I love exhibitions. It's part of my work, that the things for example, this is a work that Ferragamo, they had a new perfume. They always have money. People from fashion, they have this, they have a bit more money always. Then they said, we need to do in the Palacio, how do you say, the building of, the Stock and Change old building. We are going to do this, a presentation, incredible presentation about our new perfume. And he said, I went to the place, I was looking to the architecture and said, okay, we are going to create 2 digital envelopes, and where all the words of the Stock and Change were running, now it's going to be running the perfume. And then we did this work. Come on, I like it, and it's moving. And there were these 2 things working, and the room was black completely, and you were in the middle of these 4 walls with all these things running all around you. And then it was interesting because we were creating those digital images. And for me, it's always an occasion for finding a way to do something new for the studio. And then I'm quite finished. That is my life, my rhizome, my curiosity of being connected with many things. And so to be always connected with someone else, trying things which are different, getting in new ways of working. And I say that is Ettore Sozzas. There's now the exhibition in Triennale from him. And I always used this image at the end of my exhibition. And it's now in Triennale. When he explained what was for him design, and it was, some peace, some quiet, some doubts, if you read it. I love it. And, I think our profession is a mix of many of those things. And basta, we can come back. We'll begin. 1 hour I did, 1 hour. Exactly. Brava.
Perfect. Stay here, because they'll have questions for you. Thank you so much, Patrizia. So we can take a few questions from the audience. Maybe I'll start with one, just to get it started. You mentioned the term microarchitecture at one point, and the whole time, and having seen your work over the years, and as you're talking tonight, the question of scale and materiality, and how you maybe address different scales and different material approaches at those different scales. Because I think to the casual observer, it might seem like an easy thing to jump scales, but obviously it's not. So I'm just curious to hear how you think about that.
You always have to think, how is your memory? First, I'm an architect, because I studied 3 years in Madrid when I was, then my first, I think, impact to my profession was 18 years old and beginning, and 3 years in Madrid working, studying architectura, and being architect. Then I moved, I was not more my comfort zone. Then I always am this kind of person, not very easy. Then at a certain moment, Madrid I understood everything. We were the same friends. I needed to move, and I moved to Milano. Then Milano was another two scales together. They were doing architectura, but they were Castiglione doing progetto di industrial design. That I was saying that for me was an easy thing. That I'm going to do this because it's not going to be very difficult. And then it was the most difficult thing because was design and me, I was absolutely not prepared for that. Then I began to mix this, and there was scenography, and there was Maldonado. Tomás Maldonado was a teacher teaching us progetto di sistema ambientale. Then sistema ambientale was something about ambient, but it was not. It was about sustainability and system and the idea of if you are a designer, you are going to live in a world which is connected with a system which is larger and another larger, and everything is related. And he was the first teacher speaking about sustainability in the 80s. And then I think in that faculty, for me, was very good. For me, it's been a place where I interrelated different ways of working. And then beginning my profession more as designer, then my first clients, they were asking me, then can you do for me, an exhibition, things. Then the microarchitecture or the architecture from a smaller scale was the beginning. Then for me, it's been a nice place to research. I don't know.
So we have microphones here for anyone who has questions from the audience. If there are any. There's one up there.
Hi, Patricia. Thank you so much. That was an amazing look at your oeuvre. So my question, you showed us all these projects working in so many different materials, the incredible parquet floors, the incredible glassworks. And I'm curious, and you've worked with so many different companies. Could you talk a little bit more about how you make the decision to pursue a project? Because we assume, I think, that you are approached very often to do all kinds of different things. And what is it about a specific brief or a specific opportunity that makes you say, okay, yes, I want to pursue this as opposed to something else?
But I only work with people I like. Right? That's it's very, you see, there is it's very clear argument. Then there is first thing, I only work, Alberto knows. I always begin with no. No, I'm not going to do. No. I have a big no. From always, my mother always make a lot of fun because I was very no. And then after all those no, if I get involved, I became absolutely super easy. What I want to say, things that changed my mind. If for example, the people from ceramic, they were calling me, and I was saying, I think to work in surfaces, and I was saying, well, what can I do? I think they want from me flowers, and what they want from me, and colors, and then he came, and he's a man who is taking care of a space which is from Angelo Mangiarotti, which is an architect from the 60s, Italian, who did the most interesting, come si dice? But not industrial, comunque prefab. The prefab more sophisticated than they've been done in Italy. And he's the one, there are only two now in Italy. One is his company. Then when I saw the company and I saw that prefab, I said, oh my goodness, what is this? What's incredible. You still keep it, now it's a problem because it's quite broken, and but we want to still be in here. Then I understood there were people with this kind of attitude. Then I understood how they were working with technology, which was fantastic, the way they were approaching. Then we began to create, now the building that was the place where we were doing all the warehouse, now I began to say to him, but now I wanted void. We have to do it void. We have to do something here. I was, and after 1 year, he invited me, and he got it void. And he got another space as warehouse, and then we began to do an exhibition inside there. Then we didn't have to go to the fair. We began to do events there. Now we are doing art events there, and then it's this kind of people, then me, in time, I find Patrizia Moroso. Cassina is speak, if you say, taking care of Casina, so traditional company. But it's not this. I think in the time I'm working with my friends in the gallery for doing a VR project, and that's a fantastic thing, to have the luck that Sofia, when we'll be older, she will know, comunque, you can see a lot of copies, and then a copy of the copy of the copy of the copy is going to be pure shit, ecco, capito? Then it's going to be so difficult to make people remember how the things were done, or which were the first companies taking care of those, and then take care of those companies to make them get alive. Because if we don't take care of these companies, we lose Casina, then we will lose everything, and then there is no more memory. Then I think it's very interesting to work with them. And work with them is not only preserving, it's doing modern things, contemporary things, but we are connected with that. Then it's a kind of company you work because you have to get on that thing. And then I'm open, but I'm terrifying, curious. Then I'm a person. I think the Rizoma explained very well the way we think today. I think the more you can get in relation to different things, then my life is long. I have a lot of minutes in a day and seconds. Don't think there's a lot of time if you want. A lot of time. All the things I was showing to you, they've been done in a long time. Then it's like a gardener. There are people we have said with one argument. There are people that they need to create different things and put them together. The relations, I think, is, and I'm going to do more. I'm sure. This, yes, because I believe strongly, capito. But always moving to people that with me, I was discussing with the people, well, Hayworth is a company. When they came, I said to Alberto, I don't work. You remember. Alberto, yeah. I spoke with Franco Bianchi, which is the CEO, and they said, I don't know what you want from me, but I'm not going to come till America each time to Michigan, because it's complicated, and then what do you want from me? Because then you want, if really we can change, with all these fabrics, we cannot do anything. With this, look at here. Then we went to the headquarters, and very good architecture, that then, it was a disaster. I would say, you're speaking about fun. Then a lot of I'm like this, me always, clear. And then he said, I want you for that. I want you that you come and discuss with all of us. And then we are doing fabrics, we are doing changing, we are changing the space, we are doing technologies, a lot of things. I don't say it's not easy, but we are doing a team inside, outside. The team that work with me come to Milano 3 times a year. They never move from Holland and Grand Rapids. Capito? And now they come 3 times a year to Milano. I come with my team to New York. We do meetings in there. Now we go all together to Miami, and we are going to do things. Then I think the need to open the attitude. And they didn't want me in winter, in February, because they said if she comes in winter, she will never come back. And I said, no, the contrary, because I went in February after 2 years, and it was like, the Fargo film. You became much more, frozen. Then I understood everything. I said, then I became much more intelligent. I said, I have always to come in February because it's when I see the killer and understand the problem, capito. Then I understand that why you are stopped here. And then I understand the real problem, no? Then what I want to say, perhaps there are many ways to be. Me, I'm a person who loves relations and loves to get in different kind of things. I was teaching too, and I'm, the Triennale, they called me. Now you do another one, because they know me, I have to do a lot of things this year. But you are the only one that can do that one. Then I cannot tell, but it's the same. Then what I like, the fil rouge of people working with me, is normally we come to visit you because, Patrick, we know you don't know, but you're gonna find a way to help us to work with this thing that we don't know how to. Then this kind of, this I like, not because we like your chairs. It's not that. They know I am a person open to boo. If I like you and I like I'm interested in the problem, And that is the fil rouge, the only fil rouge. I'm lucky, very lucky. You are lucky here too, eh? I'm not the only lucky.
Hi, Patricia, thank you very much. Hello, thank you very much for the fantastic presentation. It was a wonderful collection of ideas and materials. And you have been showing us that you have been working in so many different places with so many different companies, but still you have in your speech, you have a strong connection with Italy, with Milan, because of your time when you were studying. And we have been through historically, we see that Italy has a strong identity in design, and later on also Danish design. But nowadays we live in a very global world, and you are, as a designer, contacted for different companies from many different places. And comes to my mind the question, is it still the time where we can talk about a certain European identity or Italian identity as a strong brand, or those times are already past, and is something more related to the individual and to the company and not that much to the country?
I think what is going to be the reality of Italian companies is not going to be, it's going to be, if it was, in Salone del Mobile, for example, we can speak, if you say, Salone del Mobile is going to be something interesting in future, possibly, I think the argument of design is much larger image. Then, if today and more we know we are getting the revolution of biotech, then it's obvious that the possibilities of design, they are going to be much more large than what could represent the Italian historical research connected with lighting, furniture, kitchen, and things like this. You understand that what Italia is being the industrial research that is being done in this country. Then what I want to say, future more and more the image is much large, but inside that big spectrum, there's going to be, I think there's going to be a future for Italia in some way. Then it's not a problem that for you can be interesting. Me living there, I'm going to still taking care of something happening there. Because it's natural. I'm living in Milano, then there will be what I think from the Italian side, I think those companies, they have to understand how to open their mind to other kind of researches. Then, for example, the VR project I'm doing of immersion now, I'm doing with a gallery. Nobody's helping me. Only a gallery, there is a group of people doing that, and a friend of me. But we are going to do, and then we will have it in Salone. They will say, they're going to be interested. And then by the moment, I think there are many interfaces, there are many arguments that even those companies, they could open the mind and approach. But it's a problem from them. In a global way, I think for my daughter, if I think about what is the future for a designer, I think the image is much larger. I think we have to become cyborg, no? Then we have a lot of work. Then first, we have to become bio-cyborg. Then it's much more work. We have to interrelate with all the. But that is the argument. Then me, I represent. I'm an old lady, and I'm telling you to not forget and not be golden fishes, capito. In Italy, we call them red fishes, capito, which I like more, because much more stupid, And, the memory, short is never good. We still haven't, Italia has something which is an humanistic relation, very, very. I was doing the museum in Vicenza, but I was in the Palladio building, And they were saying to me, you cannot do anything. I was saying, that is the same. I'm so happy to be doing a museum here. Even if I can put candles, I do it. You know what I mean? Then, what I want to say, we have to manage to understand what is our emotional memories, how is to juxtapose our humanistic point of view with an era where the humanistical side is not so important. But I think it's humor, a lot of connections, interrelate with many other kind of, I think many companies that they were thinking that in a only with engineers that we solve the problem, they know already. I was doing a travel now in the West Coast. We were in Google, and one of we were visiting Google, a lot of companies, because we were doing with Hayward that travel. And they were all so intended to be related with people that we think from the point of view of project and designers, people that we have, the component is, my intent is never, how to, we have to You know, it's not the money, it's not how much business we are going to do with that. It's how, if it's going to be with quality, what we are doing. The quality is going to be interesting. We are going to get something more than, in some way, my education is quite nearby of what, at the end, is the argument of what we need to do in this larger image. Then I think we have to mix a lot of kind of people, but always with a design approach to the project, to the profession. Then I'm very open. I think, but I am Milanese. Then I'm gonna be always taking care of the place I'm living. That is my story, and it's natural, no? But I don't know if But Salone del Mobile, you know, it was interesting. For example, Apple went to introduce the Apple Watch to Milano 2 years ago. Apple comes to Milano to introduce they are so sophisticated, they are there all the world, and why to come to Salone for the Apple Watch? It's not a furniture, it's not a chair. And they came because they knew, I think, and they come from Samsung, they come from all the big companies. They are doing. We were working with PepsiCo this year. The PepsiCo, they are 2 years, they are doing now a big project with this fantastic lady they have, which is connected to design, and they come to Salone. And we were doing 2 things for them. Then we were working with 3M, I capito another work. Then and why to go to Milano to this Salone of furniture, people which are intended in other, because possibly comunque it's a good connection. We can be comunque, it's going to be part of. I don't think we are the center of anything. They are not anymore center. We are in a rhizoma. We are from the inside. It's a multiplicity. That is the only thing that must be very clear for all of us. No?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patricio.